doing. The first interview was with Dr. Tom Woods, the senior fellow of the Mises Institute, which you can see it on my YouTube channel. The second one was to Vanessa Vallejo about the Colombian problem with the last FARC and the voting problem they have and with last FARC. And now I have the chance to interview a very interesting person that was the founder of the Mises Institute in Netherlands and the founder of the More Freedom Foundation, and now he was the author of a very interesting book called Beyond Democracy. Please, Frank Carsten, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me here, Thomas. It's also available in Spanish, by the way. I don't know, you didn't mention it in your introduction, but it's Más a la Democracia is the title of the Spanish edition.
Más allá de la democracia. That's the title in Spanish.
I see. Sorry, I didn't pronounce it very well.
It's okay. It's okay. No problem. Actually, I read it in Spanish. I read the book in Spanish. Even though I could have done it in English, I read it in Spanish. So if I say something wrong, something you didn't say, you can check if the translation is wrong.
Okay.
Okay. So before we start with the book, I would like to start about talking about the roots of your book. Can you tell us, when did you start seeing that the democracy system we know was a problem to society and was unfixable?
Well, I was very frustrated with democracy somewhere in 1998, I think. And I thought I had to become politically active to change things for the better, or somehow I felt that for some strange reasons, the politicians were not evil or bad, but they somehow didn't know what was good or what the electorate would like to see. And so I thought, well, maybe we need more direct democracy. And I thought that was the answer to the problems. But then I learned of the libertarian arguments against democracy, and especially through the book by Hans Hermann Hoppe, Democracy, the God That Failed, which was published, I think, in 2001. And that gave me pointers as to why democracy fails. And 8 years later, I started writing the book Beyond Democracy.
Okay. Did you live in a specific country where you noticed that?
Well, in the Netherlands. The Netherlands is considered often to be one of the best democracies in the world.
Okay.
I think that is correct, although I'm not in favor of democracy. But there are, of course, far more dysfunctional democracies, like Venezuela or Colombia or South Africa.
Yeah.
But I agree that so people think that the things are pretty good here, but there is much political frustration among the citizens in the Netherlands too. So I noticed it in our home country that there's economic stagnation, there's social strife and unemployment, which is about 5-6% currently. So that is still too high. And I noticed that the politicians didn't have an answer to that.
You mentioned in a lecture, I think was in Liberland, you mentioned that if the regulation would have stopped, had stopped in the 1950s, today we will be like twice as rich as we are now.
Yes, actually, my estimate was quite conservative, because I based that statement on an article that I can share with you later on.
Okay.
It was 2.5 times to 3 times more prosperous we would have been if the United States regulation wouldn't have grown after 1949.
Okay.
And the number of the regulation has increased 200-fold in the United States since 1913, which means that 99.5% of all laws and regulations didn't exist 100 years back. And that is an enormous burden on the economy and on entrepreneurs. So yes, that is correct. We would be far more prosperous, and you can explain it in a different way. Instead of working 5 days a week, people would have the same level of prosperity if they would have worked just 2 days a week.
And we have the case in the United States that from since the New Deal was applied with the Roosevelt, the regulation started growing up like quite fast. But was the same all around the world, by your view?
Sorry, I didn't get the question you said. Like, what's the same with
the regulation in the U.S. started growing up with the application of the New Deal by the President Roosevelt. Did that happen in all around the world? Is the same?
Well, especially with I don't know about the rest of the world, but I know it's has increased enormously in Europe too, in the European democracies, and even more so, I think, than in the United States. I cannot speak of the other countries.
Okay.
Of course, there's an increase in some regulation because, for instance, now you have drones, and in the past you didn't have drones or aircrafts. So these new technologies require some new regulation, but they even regulate our lives into detail. What we say during a job interview, who we can hire, what we can do when we have a job, how much we should earn, stuff like that, which was unheard of like 100 years back. So there's a lot of wasteful regulation.
I remember when I interviewed Tom Woods, and he mentioned that people misunderstand that people think that regulations are like the way we can like live in harmony, and he said no, that's actually the law. That's the rule. That's the job of the law. But regulation, the only thing they do is just stop creativity. They stop entrepreneurship, and they stop the growth of the wealth of every country and citizen.
Indeed, yes, they interfere into with the free contract between two actors in the economy. And since these contracts cannot be drawn up freely, they're suboptimal by definition. So it's the government that tells these contracts how they should be, instead of the economic actors themselves, and therefore many economic activity is not dealt with. I mean, people say, well, this minimum wage, for instance, is too high, so I will not hire someone, and there will be no transaction between an employer and an employee because of the regulation, and that's in that sense it limits economic activity.
I would like to move now to the book. I want to start by the beginning. In the very beginning of the book, just the first chapter is about the problems of democracy. You mentioned 13 specific problems. I would like to mention like 4, and if you could explain it, because I know that many of the listeners we're gonna have, they haven't read your book. So if you can explain the idea of this point. The first one I choose is the one that said that each vote counts, and you say that that's wrong. Why?
Well, the thing is that well, before I answer your question, I can tell you that the book is also available online through Mises Hispano.
Okay.
So that's good if people would like to look into it. And it's also for sale for like €5 or something, or $6, something like that. But let me go back to the answer to your question. The thing is that our politicians and the media and the educational system constantly tell us that it is important to vote, your vote counts, don't waste your vote. But actually, it is quite useless to vote, because your vote will not, the influence your vote has is negligible. You have a very small chance of your vote having any effect on the end results. Brian Kaplan, who wrote on Democracy 2, compared it with cheering, rooting for your team during a soccer game with like 40,000 spectators in the arena. Your cheering and your supporting will not likely result in a different end score for your team.
Yeah, you can remain quiet, and the players are not going to know that you are quiet.
Exactly.
In the arena.
Yes. So they even say that in a large election, like in the United States, with like 100 million voters, the chances of getting killed in a car accident on your way to the voting booth is larger than your vote having any effect on the end result. No, there's and of course, if you would like to vote, it makes sense that you will read up on the policies, on the party programs of the various parties and politicians. So you have to invest quite some time, not only in voting, which would take half an hour or maybe an hour, but that would be just almost like a random vote. You're not informed, you didn't inform yourself yet. But if you want to inform yourself, and this is of course sensible to do, then you would have to invest far more time. So the balance between investment and likely result is very skewed. It's not very it's not very sensible, therefore, to go and vote.
It's easier to make a research for the car or the book or the apartment you want to buy than making a research about the politician or the regulation they want to implement in Congress.
Yes, indeed. And also they give no guarantee that even if your vote will count and your party of preference will will start ruling the country, they can just ignore the or break election promises. They have no contract with you.
I remember studying the period of colony in South America, and I remember that like all the governors were, after they finished their government, they had to like explain everything they did and show it to it wasn't the king, but there was another person, and they had to show and explain what they did and to show results about their governments. But that doesn't happen in democracy nowadays. People just vote for the president, prime ministers, and politicians can change anything in the way, and nobody's gonna take them.
Exactly. They never end up in jail. They don't have to pay a fine if they break election promises. They can, as you could see with the Iraq war, they can they can start foreign wars, which are very costly and very deadly, and they can start them under false pretenses, like the weapons of mass destruction that were not found in Iraq. Based on, well, not even false intelligence, but, well, completely fabricated intelligence, you could say. And so they can break election promises with impunity. And and they don't have to be held they can't be held accountable in that way. The only thing they can say, well, if you didn't like the result, then vote for someone else next time. But of course we would never accept such a deal with our car repair shop, for instance, and say if they can make a complete mess out of it, they don't say, well, next time you should get another car repair shop. We would consider that unacceptable, but politicians can get away with it. It's just, democracy is not a very good way to steer or direct or control and contain politicians, contain the rulers.
Another point you mentioned is the myth about democracy is politically neutral. What is it false?
Well, it is false because yes, like I thought in the past, is that you can go. It's a neutral system. You can go either way. It can turn out green, ecology. It can turn out conservative. It can turn out social democrat or liberal or free markets. But that is false, because the basic principle of democracy is that it's the idea that we can and often must decide on everything collectively, and the majority gets to say what the rules will be. So the individual is subordinate to the wishes of the collective, just as with communism or fascism. And therefore, democracy suffers from the same negative results as for instance, socialism. Centralization of power, loss of liberty through increased government meddling with our lives and with the economy, economic stagnation because of continuously growing taxes and increasing regulatory burden, corruption because of the increased bureaucracy and stuff. So it is, in essence, a collectivist idea, and it's not without any surprise, therefore, that Karl Marx has said that democracy and socialism are one and indivisible. It's giant redistribution machine, and not necessarily from the rich to the poor, but always from the powerless to the powerful, from the responsible to the irresponsible, from the hardworking to the lazy. And it's also surprising that the Socialist Party of the United States wrote that democracy and socialism are one and indivisible.
The other point you mentioned is that democracy is indispensable to a sense of community. Is it, or is not indispensable?
Well, there are many other ways we can form a community, and actually it creates not a community, it creates social strife, and we can clearly see that it creates antagonism between various groups during the elections. And the recent elections in the United States were unheard of. I mean, there was a lot of aggression and animosity between the groups, violence, and so this is clearly a result of the basic principle of democracy, namely that the winner takes all, and the winner, who wins will be highly contested. Therefore, people, it can be switch either way very easily with a few extra votes, as we could see with the Al Gore election and against George Bush. In Florida, it just matters a few thousand votes. And you can see that there's enormous social strife because of that. And the winner will implement one-size-fits-all rules. Like when Obama won, he implemented Obamacare. And although he said in advance that Oh no, people who already have a private health insurance, they can keep it. But of course, he had to swallow his words, and he said that no, it's going to be one size fits all regarding healthcare for everyone. So, and this of course creates a lot of frustration and disillusionment with people. And democracy is a system that reduces the diversity of millions of individual choices of as many citizens to a few choices of politicians and bureaucrats.
The last point that I choose that I consider was interesting was that democracy promotes peace and helps to fight corruption. Why is it incorrect?
Well, it doesn't help fight corruption. Take, for instance, the largest democracy in the world, India. It has a lot of corruption. The reason there can be corruption is also because so much is decided upon by bureaucrats, and there are many lobby groups who pay for their politicians, for instance, because power is centralized, so it pays a lot to bribe those people. And we could see that with Hillary Clinton too, with his Pay for Play Clinton Foundation, together with Bill Clinton. She was paid by Morocco a few million. She was paid by Qatar quite some money, and this is the natural result, the logical result of a centralization of power and money being spent by bureaucrats and politicians. That is not their own money, and the negative results of their corruption will not be felt by themselves, by them. And therefore they have a very strong incentive to be corrupt. The other thing is peace. If you look at the United States, it is indeed true, I think, that democracies do not like to wage war against each other, but they love to wage war against non-democracies. Like we could have seen that with Iraq, with Libya, with Syria, and the United States has waged war about 90% since its independence. And it spends almost 50% of all, defense, or you could say it's offense, but of military spending in the world. And they have created a lot of, they have, how do you say, they have fostered regime change in the world, like in Iran, for instance, in Persia in the 1950s. But also in Chile, wasn't it? And
yeah.
I'm not saying that Allende was a good person, but it's not exactly that they don't interfere with foreign policy, politics, or with foreign wars. They don't seem to care really. I mean, they even dropped 2 atomic bombs. It's the only country in the world that used them against citizens. So I don't think the United States is it is one of the main, it's the strongest democracy. It's one of the biggest democracies in the world, and one of the oldest too, but it has quite a violent history.
The U.S. attacks for the freedom for other peoples, or that's what they say.
Well, yeah, let's ask the people in Libya.
Yeah, how many people have died there, and for their supposed freedom, and they don't even have the chance to support it or to be against it. They just
it's a complete mess indeed. And of course, with 9/11, about 3,000 people died. The Americans died. But Madeleine Albright was asked whether the casualties was about 500,000 casualties in Iraq was worth it. She did that during an interview on television. And she said, yes, it was worth it. So it's remarkable. I mean, the United States doesn't allow a few hundred deaths or casualties, and when there are foreign citizens concerned, then they don't seem to care very much. So, and of course they had this history in Vietnam too, where they bombed civilians too, and so I don't think they're very peaceful democracies.
In the end of your book, you kind of explain the idea of what it will be like the solution of the replacement for democracy, but I didn't quite understand if the idea was to have a like anarcho-capitalist society or was to have like a micro states instead of huge countries. What is the idea?
Well, if there will be, there are now currently there 200 countries in this world. So, and these countries have the monopoly. They can print money. They can boss around their citizens, their subjects, and they can make all kinds of laws. So there's not very much competition between them. And I think the alternative would be, I'm an anarcho-capitalist myself, but of course I would like to, most people are not anarcho-capitalists. So if I would propose that alternative in the book, most people would not, I would have to explain much more than that. So I say, well, democracy works worse when it's bigger, and we can make democracy less relevant if we allow citizens to vote with their feet. So if we have smaller democracies, because if you don't suppose all your bakeries in Chile are democratically managed or something, and I would say, well, Thomas, I will give you a vote too for your the bakery you normally come to. And you would say, for me, it's totally irrelevant, because if I don't like it, I go vote with my feet, and I go to a different bakery.
Yeah.
So, and therefore, your right to vote and the democratic process will be far less relevant, and it will be subjected to the discipline of the market, like we do when we buy our cars or bread. And so I'm in favor of privatizing governance. So to create a market for governmental services like justice and infrastructure and security. And I'm currently, since about last May, I'm currently involved with the organization Free Private Cities Ltd, which maybe you've seen the website, and it wants to create new territories within a host country in which new laws and regulations apply, and it will be done on a commercial basis with a clear contract with its residents, with companies that set up shop there, and for a fixed fee, for a fixed yearly fee, a low fee, which provides contractual certainty for its residents. So, and that will be an enormous improvement on both the price and the quality of governmental services. And we can see already that it works very well, because small countries, micronations like Liechtenstein, Monaco, they work very well. Countries like Singapore and Hong Kong work very well. They're a bit bigger than the micronations like Liechtenstein, because Liechtenstein has only it's a country in Europe with a prince, Hans Adam, and it has only 37,000 inhabitants, but it has one of the highest GDPs per capita in the world. And this competition creates quality and lower prices, so better service and lower prices.
How do you explain the case of Switzerland? Because Switzerland is known as the country with the with the best democracy, of the strongest democracy, of the more democratic country
Yes.
we may say. And we cannot say that, okay, they may have some corruption, but it's like the country with the less amount of corruption, and the amount of wealth they have is huge. It's one of the richest countries in the world.
Yes, indeed. Well, I explain it this way. I think it is not so much that they're more democratic. They have a direct democracy. And I do agree that it is a very successful country. It has a high GDP, life expectancy is high, unemployment is very low at about 3%, I think, or well, far less than the European average. And but I think that that is the consequence of not being part of the EU. I think also having a separate currency, not the euro, but mostly I think because it consists of 25 so-called cantons, which are like provinces.
Yeah.
And on average, a province is about 250,000 inhabitants, has about 250,000 inhabitants. And they have a strong, large autonomy regarding taxes, regarding healthcare, regarding education. And this creates a competition between the various cantons, which is beneficial to their economic growth, to their quality of living, because the one canton even has a regressive tax, which means that the more you earn, the lower percentage you pay taxes for.
Okay.
Which is unheard of in the Netherlands, for instance. So there's a lot of decentralization, and therefore it creates competition. And we rely on competition for better mobile phones, for instance, but we don't rely on competition for better governance. And so the more competition we have, the better governments we will have.
But the case of the cantons of Switzerland are an example of voting with your feet, because you can move from one canton to another, and the change of taxes and regulation is huge. Some cantons have a huge difference of taxes, and
yes,
and they are very small, so it's not ideal to move to one place to another to live, but it's much easier than in other countries.
Quite correct, yes. But I must add, though, that the trend, the centralizing trend in Switzerland is quite similar as to the centralizing trend in the United States or in Europe. So taxes have risen too, but less than the European average. And centralization has increased too, but less so than in Europe. So, of course, the problem with democracy is that compared to the market, it doesn't have a safety valve. In the market, the safety valve is the right to start a new company whenever you like for a price that you like. So if Apple and Samsung, start a cartel, or one becomes a monopolist because it becomes too big, anyone has the right to compete with them, and therefore increasing services, lowering prices. But in a democracy, this is not the case, because if you don't like what the majority decides, you cannot say, well, I will secede, I will start my own system. So there's very little competition within democracy, and therefore there's a centralizing trend, because just as with companies have a natural inclination to limit competition through cartels or price fixing or monopolizing, whatever. And there is nothing wrong with that. This is, of course, very natural, but they can't get away with it because of the right of others to start a new company. But that same dynamic doesn't work. The same trends, the same inclination is present with politicians, and you can see that with the European Union continuously centralizing authority and policies, but there's no safety valve there. So therefore, the only safety valve would be secession, for instance, or administrative secession, wherein in which for instance, a province would say, well, we want to go our own way. In the United States, it would be called something like nullification. So to secede in a more administrative way from the central authority in Washington.
There is a Spanish journalist called Manuel Llamas who once said in a video that there is nothing more democratic than the free market, because you can vote for the coffee you drink in the morning, you can vote for the bread you eat in the morning, you vote for the spaghetti you eat in your lunch, and for the tea you drink in the afternoon, and the beer you drink in the night. Do you agree with that?
Yes, very much so. Democracy is often mistaken for power to the people, but that's not true. It's actually power to the state, because whenever the democracy decides anything, it's the state that has to implement it. And the state is directed through, very loosely though, through the majority vote, which it does hardly represent. But every time the market, the market does represent what people want, because they spend their own money, whereas politicians spend our money on not even on their own goals, but on on other people. So they don't take very much consideration of either price or quality. And in the market, every actor, everyone who buys something has a very small influence on the outcome, and therefore it's far more peaceful than democracy. Because if you would like a Samsung phone and I would like an iPhone, we are not our ideological enemies, but in a democracy we are, because it will be either Samsung or iPhone.
So we can say that you consider that the market is a good way of, or is a better way of democracy, but the current system we have is not good because we are not allowed to leave the jurisdiction we live in.
Yes, actually, like I said, democracy is one size fits all, and democracy is not very tolerant because it doesn't allow the minority to go their own way, or any minority. It doesn't allow the individual to go his own way, but it doesn't even allow the 49% minority to go its own way. Even if they say, no, we will secede, we will not do what you like, but we will be democratic anyway. So the Netherlands has 17 million inhabitants, and suppose like 8 million want to go their own way, which is a minority. And they say, no, we'll be democratic. You believe in democracy, you majority. So why wouldn't you let us be a democracy too, but separate from your democracy? And of course they don't like that, because the people in a democracy, they want to exploit others. That's what people do when they vote, because they can vote other people's money. And of course they don't want to let them be able to escape that coercion.
But as I understand, democracy, most of democracy, or I think the only exception is Liechtenstein, that has the right of secession for every I don't know,
for every municipality. Yes.
Yeah, for every municipality, and all the rest of the country that are democratic, they don't have the right the right of secession. But I don't see that democracy itself doesn't allow the right of secession. That's my concern, because you're saying that democracy doesn't allow secession, but we could have a democracy with
Well,
secession.
theoretically, of course, yes, that's true. Nothing in, well, the whole idea of majority rule falls if you have the right to secede, because then you say, okay, you have majority rule, and then we dislike that rule, so we secede, and therefore majority rule doesn't become majority rule anymore, because they don't rule over the people who secede. So it is not written in stone, though, but it is a logical result of the democratic idea. Because Bernie Sanders wouldn't like, if Bernie Sanders would come to power in the United States, he said, well, I'm going to redistribute a lot of money, and a lot of people would like that, since on average only a few percent is rich or very wealthy. But if the wealthy can secede, they will not like that. They cannot continue with their redistributive policy. And therefore secession and democracy are not very compatible.
I agree that there are many people that only want to abuse of the rest of the people and steal the wealth from those who work, from those who have business and do entrepreneurship. But there are people who live in communities and want to live in let's say a small democracy, just because they want to live in a community. For example, the people who live in apartments in a building, and they have rules for the buildings. I don't know. For example, in this building, all the people cannot have pets, or in the other building they can have pets, or in this building you cannot have barbecues because of the smoke. But they have rules, but they can sell the apartment if they want and move to another building and change or come back to the building, and they can move. But they said they create a small democracy, and they are ruled by the democracy, and they agree to, if they lose because of democracy, they just stick by the rule that was approved, and they agree to live under that way. But if the change is extreme, okay, they move.
Yes, indeed. So you know in advance what the rules are. You know how the rules can be changed. You know that the rules will apply to a limited area, namely your owner. How do you say that? With a group of houses.
I forgot the word as well, so don't worry.
Yeah. Well, people will understand what we mean. But this is a voluntary association, and you can avoid it, you can escape it, you can sell your house. This is all, you have legal certainty in that regard. And if you don't like it, you can always buy a house which is not part of such a scheme. So you have far more certainty, and you have far more flexibility.
So,
and yes,
yeah, continue.
Well, the thing is, it is such a housing association, I think it's called, is subjected to the discipline of the market, because they're not the only housing association around. So people, just like if you would have a tennis club, which would be democratically managed or ruled, if the rich members wouldn't be able to say, okay, I'll go somewhere else, I will quit my membership, then it would be a natural incentive for the remaining members to charge the rich members more than the poor members, because naturally the rich members are a minority. But of course they can in a way secede from the tennis club, and therefore it is all within reason what the tennis club is doing.
My view of the small democracies is that you can fix the problem of like voting, because in the huge democracies, like in every country and especially in the United States, where it's huge the amount of people who can vote, it's impossible to notice if the politician you voted for is he he does, to check if he does what he promised, or if he changed or everything. It's impossible, and even if you can do it, it takes a lot of time and money. But in a very small democracy, like, for example, we were working on that the apartments or the houses, you can, for example, if you vote for, I don't know, one of the neighbors is going to take care of the garden we share in the community. You only have to open your front door and check if the garden is pretty, and that's it. It's much cheaper and faster to check if the democracy, so to speak, is working.
Yes, indeed, true, and you have far more influence, in convincing your neighbors to do X or Y, and it's all far more manageable, and your vote carries much more weight. So, like I said, a small democracy works better than a big one.
In the case of where you have the private city, even in a private city, you have to deal with people. You have to, I don't know, you create even if everything is private, you create community with people, and in some moment or another, you're gonna have problem with people. You're gonna have to deal with the difference and with what they like and what they don't like. And in some moment, you have to get deals, and to get deals among these people, you will have to arbitrate somehow. So don't you have the kind of democracy even with a secession? But don't you need a kind of democracy in that case?
No, not necessarily. When you and I enter into a contract, we can state in the contract that if we disagree on the execution of the contract, or how it's been adhered to, who is going to do the arbitration. And in the contract already, we appoint a third party, which we both agree on, who will do so. So it doesn't require a democracy, and so this is already the case with international insurance companies. They rarely go to the state for arbitration if they disagree among each other. They have independent arbitration, which doesn't have a police force. It cannot enforce the ruling of the arbitration board, but the reputation, therefore, is very important. And once you do not comply with the ruling of the arbitration board, you will find it very difficult as an insurance company to find new business. People are not very willing to do business with you because you didn't comply with the regulation or with the ruling of the arbitration board. Same is with the Jewish diamond traders in New York. They don't go to the New York judge. They have arbitration among themselves, and this is peaceful, without police. And but reputation is key there. And you can also see that with eBay. eBay doesn't have a police force. They even guarantee faulty transactions where one party doesn't deliver the goods. They know from statistics that only a very small percentage of traders is not trustworthy, but they want to be 100% trustworthy towards their customers. and therefore they guarantee that remaining 0.1%. And you can see with these auction sites that reputation is key. And this is a very peaceful and very effective way of doing business.
I want to come back to the point of the democracy we have nowadays. I think the main problem of the democracy, but it's not democracy itself, but the lack of the right of secession. Because if I consider that if we had the right of secession, we could I don't know, this area of the country we could separate from the country, and we could establish a government with contract, like in a like the private city you mentioned. We can establish a total anarcho-capitalist system, or we can establish a welfare state.
Yes, quite true. It makes the democracy a bit less relevant, and the thing is also we are used to the whole concept of majority rule. For instance, if you go out with 7 people during the evening, and you have to decide whether you go to a certain restaurant, either a pizzeria or a Chinese restaurant. And the thing is that if the majority, if 5 of the 7 people insist on going to or prefers a Chinese restaurant, they cannot force the remaining 2 to comply. They say, well, of course, the remaining, since they're probably friends or acquaintances, they have a very strong incentive to say, well, okay, let's go to the Chinese restaurant then, since that is the majority preference. But if they really hate Chinese, then they can say, okay, you go to the Chinese restaurants, and we 2 go to a pizzeria. And so that's far more peaceful, and it's far less coercive than parliamentary democracies. And if it would be like a regular democracy, the Chinese restaurant goers, they could force the others to go with them, and even let them pay for everyone. And this is how our current democracy works.
What do you think about the case of Liberland? Do you think it could be an exception to the rule, or do you think it's gonna fail in the same mistake if it succeeds as a country?
Why would it fail, or why would it be an exception? I don't understand.
I mean, Liberland is going to be a democracy. They're going to have a parliament.
I see. I didn't know that. Well, when I was there in August, and you watched the YouTube talk that I gave there, they were undecided still. So I don't know. But even if they become a democracy, just like Liechtenstein is a democracy, it is a very strong direct democracy with some special rights for the prince, which is he can disband the government, and he can veto certain laws. But on the other side, it's quite democratic. And Liechtenstein, of course, can work very well because it's small. People have the right to secede, and importantly also is that they are subjected to the market for governance. They cannot be autarkic because they're very small, and they have to be attractive because their residents can easily go to other countries. So I think it can work. If a democracy is small, it can work very well. But it also, a small democracy makes the democratic process also far less relevant.
I remember listening an interview to the Prince of Liechtenstein, the Prince Adam. I forgot the name. Hans Adam.
Hans Adam II, I think.
and Samuel II, and he said that his priority is to privatize like every system as every service of the government as much as possible, and if neither the government and neither the market inside Liechtenstein is capable of providing the service, if they have to get it from outside, they just allow it to get it from outside. If another company, for example, I don't know, Amazon wants to get into the specific business of, I don't know, giving, I don't know, a hospital to the people, they are free to get in and service to the citizens of Liechtenstein.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. I think Prince Hans Adam, I think his son is now Prince Alois, is now the official ruler. But Hans Adam has written a book too, The State in the Third Millennium, and he's very much in favor of competition between countries. And I think that is the future. I think the 19th century was the century of authoritarian rule. The 20th century was clearly the century of, although it didn't start out very well with the First World War, but and later on the Second World War, but it was the century of the democratization of governance. And I think the third millennium, the 23rd, at least the 21st century, will mark the period of the privatization of governmental services. And one example is, for instance, well, it's not an example, but it's an indication of the direction the world is going to. It's like the special economic zones in China, for instance. They paved the way for a huge economic turnaround and political turnaround of China, and it started with cities. Similar, even Saudi Arabia wants to start a special economic zone. It's called CAIC, the King Abdullah economic territory. I don't know. I think, yeah, it failed. It started 10 years ago, but they even understand that you have to have a low regulation, low taxes, a contractual economic model where you offer foreign investors the legal certainty of a contract. And this idea has gained ground enormously in the past 30 years, and I think it will grow and prosper in the coming decades.
I'm really excited to ask you about the more details about the private city project in which you are working on, but I want to leave that for the next interview, and I would like to ask you about the foundation you're working on, or the foundation you're founded, the More Freedom Foundation, I guess this is the name. What is this about?
Well, it's not very active currently anymore. I'm so much involved with writing a new book with Free Private Cities, with the old book. Next Monday I will talk to the potential Turkish translator of the book.
Okay.
I don't know if you mentioned it, but it's now in 20 languages or 21.
21 languages. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, so it's growing, and that is a good thing, because we are actually at the start of the anti-democratic movement in the world. It's still very small, but it's gaining ground. That is good. And I'm currently, it was in 2001 that I started the More Freedom Foundation, and it was quite effective in changing people's minds. Luckily in the Netherlands, but currently it is a bit suspended. It's still available, all the articles and stuff and the videos. But later on, I started the Mises Institute, which is more economically focused, And after 3 years, I resigned as chairman, and now I'm spokesperson for the Free Private Cities company, corporation in Monaco.
Something I have to recognize about your book, Beyond Democracy, is that it's quite easy to read and understand. It's nothing technical, nothing complex. You don't have to be an expert in economics, in political science, or anything like that. It's as I say, it's very easy. It's easy to read.
Very accessible, you mean?
Yeah, very accessible. You can read it easily in 1 or 2 days without many problems.
Well, we put great effort in making it very accessible and very concise. It has only 100 pages, and so it makes for difficult writing if you want to write it in a simple way. And my next book will be on the right to discriminate. And
okay, that's gonna be good.
Yes, because it's quite an issue now in the United States, but also in Europe, and maybe also in Chile. I don't know.
Yeah, it's quite a topic here, the discrimination, and we have many. Now we're applying rules for that some schools cannot discriminate students, or some places cannot discriminate clients and things like that.
Yeah.
So it's quite a topic, and if you talk about in favor of discrimination, you're being very what is the word? Politically
incorrect.
Politically incorrect. Politically incorrect. That's the word. Yeah.
Yes. Well, the way I see political correctness is people use the term political correctness if they can accuse you of being politically incorrect because they cannot say you're factually incorrect, and so political correctness is an enemy of truth, I think. So it is an honor to be called politically incorrect for me. But I mean it in a very good sense, actually, because I will explain in the book why everybody discriminates and why it serves a useful economic and social purpose. And most of all, I explain why outlawing discrimination will hurt the people that it tries to protect. So even the minorities, those who most people think suffer from discrimination, will suffer even more if we outlaw discrimination. And that is a remarkable addition to the whole discussion, I think.
I remember I had a discussion about discrimination with a friend, a girl, and she was, of course, against discrimination, and she had a boyfriend. And I asked her, why you choose him as a boyfriend and not this other guy? I know, because this guy is, I don't know, is stupid or is ugly or whatever. And I asked her, isn't that discrimination?
Yes.
That's discrimination.
Well, you're quite correct, because in the relationship market, in the dating world, on dating sites, people discriminate unabashedly and unapologetically. They discriminate on everything, like height, gender, income, tattoos, anything, and they do it without any shame. And somehow we agree with that kind of discrimination. And they discriminate on age, for instance, and short men are far less. Short men who don't have money are far less popular with the women than rich tall men, for instance. So they discriminate, and whereas these men, they could maybe they could be perfect partners. They could be, like wonderful in bed, or as a cook, but they discriminated on it anyway. They dismiss these people very easily, and somehow we accept that kind of discrimination. I think we should, and but we somehow we don't accept discrimination when we have a vacancy for a job
As
and you have a job interview.
as I understand discrimination, you cannot choose anything without discrimination. You have to discriminate by some way to choose A from B, or to choose blue from orange, or to choose one from two. You need
Yes.
discrimination to choose to move in the world.
I don't want to go into that too much now, for it's a total different topic, and we've been talking for more than an hour now, so we can leave that for another podcast, if you like.
When are you launching your book about discrimination? Do you have any specific
well,
date
the Dutch
yet?
edition, the way I do it is I always, well, not always, second time, the route that I took earlier was have a Dutch edition first. It's of course my mother tongue, so it's
Yeah.
easier, and then get responses from readers and
Okay.
improve on it in the English edition.
Okay.
And then the English edition was translated into other languages. So it allows me for a correction phase. I really like that. And so it's planned for March.
Okay, perfect.
I'm pretty far, and luckily I have a lot of help from people that are very knowledgeable and skilled in the art of writing. So, but it's going to be unapologetic, and it's going to be even. I hope it's going to be even more condensed and more powerful than the Beyond Democracy book.
Okay, so I hope I can have the chance to interview about the two things now: the private cities project, the private city project, and later, probably next year, about your book, the right of discrimination. So, Frank, I want to thank you a lot for your time, and have a good night. I know it's late there, so you can go to sleep or whatever. And thank you again for your time to explain it and this talking about your book.
Okay, well, it was a pleasure, Thomas. And if your listeners want to know more about Beyond Democracy, they can go to beyonddemocracy.net, and they can click on the Spanish flag.
Okay.
Or on the English flag.
I will write the link in the video, so they can, on the audio of the video, and they can go there right away.
Very well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good one.
It was a pleasure. You too.